And we are back with yet another lecture when it comes to Flutter. This time we are going to have a look at navigation. Most Flutter applications, they consist of a number of pages or screens. You can say either one of them, and I usually use them interchangeably. So navigation is basically to be able to walk to another page or another screen. There are two ways of doing this with a simpler navigator class, which is kind of a really straightforward going to that page way of doing stuff, and that's quite okay for most occasions. Or we have a more flexible and complex router class, or actually Go router, as we'll see later on, because the default implementation of doing it has been, if not deprecated, because it's still used underneath, but it's not as flexible and good as this new Go router is. Anyway, the idea is that whenever you navigate to another screen, these new screens or pages are stacked on top of each other. So that means that it looks like a stack from the data structure stack. This also makes it fairly easy to understand what back means, namely to the previous screen that's available in the stack. We'll start off by using the navigator class to create something that's called dynamic navigation. That is, you don't need to declare all the paths that are available before you use this navigation. This makes it fairly easy to just jump to another screen. It has a method of, which we will be using for getting the context, and then either push or pop in order to get to the correct screen. In order to do the jumping, so to say, itself, it's using a root class of some kind to do, as I said, the jump to the next screen. We will be looking at the material page root class and its builder method in order to do this. I should also say that in this case we put everything in one file, but ideally each of the different screens or pages that you have should be in a separate file. But with that we can jump to our programming, and we'll see that we have a first page over here, and we can press the second page like this, and we'll jump to this second page. As this is a material app, we get a little back button up here, which makes it possible for us to go back. But we'll also see how we can extend this example with a go back button. Looking at the application itself, it has a couple of stateless widgets. So it doesn't need to be stateful, because what we are not really changing state, we are changing screen that's active. But they can of course be stateless screens, pages as well. So what we have is an elevated button, and here we have the navigator, and in order to go to the second page, we need to do a push, just as a stack. So when we do that, we will have a material page router, which will then give us a builder for the next page, like this. And that will make it possible for us just to jump to that next page. And we have the arrow notation, since this is actually a method call, but it's a one-liner, so we can easily use this. And on the second page, we actually don't do anything right now, but we will in a second do just that. Let's see if I can And we have now updated the example with a little kind of magic. The second page now also has a button. So if we go to the second page, it has a back again button. And this back again button will return to the first page. So how do we do that? Well, we have an elevated button as usual over here. And when pressed, we have the navigator again, which has a simple pop to go back to the previous page. We could have gone to any other page, but in this case we just wanted to pop again and get back to the previous page. So that's basically how that works. The simplest way of doing navigation, and as I said, that's something that you could do for quite a few applications. It doesn't have to be more difficult than that. The other way of doing it is by using a navigating router instead, and the previous way of doing this was by using something called named routes, but this is no longer the recommended way of doing it, although there's still a lot of examples for this out there. So it's out of date and it doesn't work with web applications, among other things. And if you see something like in the code example at the bottom of this page, you know that you've reached something which will have a named route, and you should avoid it. So the alternative that is recommended by the Flutter team is a package called GoRouter, and it's also created and maintained by Flutter. But it does mean that you need to install a external package via pubspec YAML or by issuing the command flutter pub and then GoRouter, and it will install itself. You find the documentation on the GoRouter page, and also remember to import the package itself. This is a much more robust way and more future-proof, and it will have loads of more interesting features when you go further, like for example deep linking. It works as the router approach that it replaces, namely by stating what kind of routes it's got. That means that we will define what kind of ways that the user can navigate. So it does use the router API, but it has a variable called GoRouter or of that type that we use in order to define the different routes, and then we have a material app router constructor which we use in order to register it. And then we have an approach like previously where we say GoRouter of context, which is where we are right now, and then the method go in order to go to another screen. And we'll have a look at what that could look like. And here we have the updated example, which actually works exactly the same. So we go to the second page and we can then return to the first page again. The difference is that we are now using this GoRouter instead of using the normal navigation. So we will create a variable of GoRouter type where we define the routes that we want in our applications, and this gives us a much more declarative way of working with the different paths that we have. And they call it a path, so we say that if we want a path called /, then that should correspond to the first page. So we return a material page first page from the page builder. And if we have a path looking like this, /second, then we return the second page. So instead of using the exact pages as we did in the previous example, when we did the navigation, we can now navigate by using these paths instead. We send this Go router to the first part, which is a stateless widget, which will create the application itself, namely first page. And again, we should use first page and second page in our own files. But in order for this to work, we have this my app, which has this router config Go router for the material app that kind of register this router for everything that's coming after this one. So by using this, we have registered that we have a router, and therefore we can then work with the different things that we are going to work with, namely our screens. And first page over here is this first page, where the only difference is that in this on pressed, we will go to Go router of context Go second instead. And we do something similar on the second page, but there we use the path / instead to go back. And we can see that it works nicely. Like that. And that's how you use that. In this example, we've just had a look at how it works. There's of course a lot more that you could do with navigation, like for example the deep linking for starting the correct application if you press a link and so on. However, this will be kind of enough for doing the stuff that we want to do in this series of lectures. But it is important to know of and how to move around in your application, because most applications, as we said, will have navigation. And as with most things in Flutter, navigation can be done in different ways. The first one that we showed you with the navigator class is a really straightforward, easy way if you just want to be inside of your specific application. And we would prefer that way of doing it for most applications. But as soon as you need a little bit more, and you need perhaps to be able to export this to web and desktop, it is a good idea to look at the router-based navigation instead. But that's it for now. That's it for these navigations. So until the next time, see you later. Bye.